We're gonna get started at 7 o'clock. My name's John, I'm the president of the Osterville Association, and around me, surrounding me are our directors of the association here tonight. We'd like to start with the secretary's report. We got the report from November. Are there any additions or changes? You have a second? Second. All in favor of moving the minutes from November 1st, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Moving on. Treasury report, okay.
Okay, the organization, the association, we have 3 bank accounts here. One is our main checking account with $1,875 in it. We have the Robert Smith Fund, which is allocated to gifts, and then we have $25,440 in that, and we have our money market fund, which is our savings account. We are not actually starting to earn interest again, so after 10 years, we started earning a couple bucks a month. No, so we have about 2,600 there, so all told, we have about 30,000 in the account. But I was just talking with John about one of the things, which is, you all know there's a little bit of inflation out there. And so just kind of going over the numbers, the first 6 months fiscal this year versus last year, and we're very similar in what we do, and our expenses are up about 20%. And so, but I think they're not the only ones who are finding that out. But it's just something to think about in the future, which we're doing here. But there's inflation out there. So, but otherwise we're fine. We do have enough money to make some generous gifts.
Any questions for Al? One thing we were talking about is that our enterprise account, our basic checking account, has actually gone fairly low. We have a large amount in the Robert Smith Fund for gifts and for other petitions for nonprofits in the village and everything else. But we're having a little problem about cash flow. So the question is, what does the board would like to do about that? Go ahead, Gail.
The donations like the Christmas stroll, do they come out of the Robert Smith Fund? I think they should.
They never have. No, that's.
I think the Robert started the Christmas stroll. I think those definitely should be out of the Robert Smith Fund.
Okay.
Those general. That would be my feeling. We've also started the stroll and started Village Day. I mean, he was very active in all those. But that seems to me more like an event that should come out of the Robert Smith Fund. As I know anyone else feels.
I think that makes sense, because my 11 years doing this here, that the amount of Robert Smith Fund is pretty well up. But if you just look at how much every year for the Christmas stroll, there's still more than enough money in the fund to do that.
Have you written checks for that yet?
Yes,
Okay, that's going to be next year.
next year.
Maybe if we should
Transfer the funds from one to the other.
Yeah, maybe we'll do that. The funds have been transferred recently to, and then one more transfer from the box back into the account. So we can keep the flow.
Yeah,
For the time being, we want to talk about other means of dealing with that.
that was
$1,900.
$1,900, which is enough for sure.
Yeah. So, okay, everybody think of something else. Right.
You just gave me checks for 22 million for the stroll. Because that's what we voted a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Towards the stroll.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion to accept the treasury report for December 6th. Second. Second, the treasurer's report for December 6th, 2022. Say aye. Aye. Vote. Okay, moving on. Gail, O.B.P.A. report.
Kimberly Williams has stepped down from the steering committee. We have voted to replace her with Carol Williams, a former member who has agreed to rejoin us for a term expiring May 31st, 2025. Bruce Williams has sent out the Christmas charities letters for the O.B.P.A. appeal for 2022. Returns are just starting to come in. We will present the text to the Cape Cod Times Needy Fund and the Salvation Army on Wednesday, December 14th at 2 p.m. at the Rockland Tracks, West Bay Road. Anyone's welcome to attend that presentation. Plans are finalized for our 53rd annual Osterville Open House and Stroll to be held this Friday, December 9th. More events will be held Saturday, December 10th. A copy of the flyer is attached. I forgot to attach it. We thank the O.B.A. for contributing to the music and events on these days. The town DPW has put up the lights on the 3 large trees in the village center. We are again going to have a decorated golf cart parade at 5:30 p.m. on Friday evening. They will escort Santa in the Center of Osterville Marston's Village fire engine to Sotheby's Real Estate, where he will greet the children during the evening. The ecumenical prayer service will be held on the steps of the Baptist Church at 6 p.m. We are still working in opposition to the Avangrid wind farm coming ashore at DOWSES Beach and continuing on through our business district. We added our approval to the O.P.A. letter sent to the Mass DEP last week in opposition to this project. We wish everyone a very Merry Christmas and don't forget to shop local.
Thank you, Carrie. Moving on, let's see, next, Save Greater Dowses Beach, Suzanne Conley has agreed to speak to us to let us know what's happening there in her organization.
I want to thank the O.B.A. board for asking me to speak tonight and catch everyone up on the work we've been doing in our nonprofit association that we call Save Greater Dowses Beach. We've been very, very busy. I tell people I used to be retired, but and I want to also thank the O.B.A. for bringing this project, this proposal for this project to everyone's attention in the first place with your postcard this summer. I think if it hadn't been for that, we would still be in the dark. We have one mission: to prevent the proposed landing of electrical export cables at DOWSES. We have a working group that meets once a week or every other week to work toward achieving this end. We've said it before, but it bears repeating. We are not opposed to offshore wind power, just the use of one of Barnstable's most unique coastal zone environments to do so. We've identified 3 goals. First, we want to raise awareness about this project, not only in Osterville, but throughout the town. We've established a public Facebook page that now includes 385 members and 2 trolls. We have an email distribution list with over 350 addresses on it. I've been interviewed on 2 news radio programs on WXTK. I was interviewed this morning by NPR's 90.1 Cape and Islands radio. We've been featured in the CC Times, the Barnstable Patriot, and we're working on a possible feature piece with a Boston television station. We've done 2 direct mailings, and those signs have really done a good job bringing people to our cause. But even now, we constantly hear people tell us they had no idea this was going on. This just happened this weekend. We find this to be very unfortunate, but must say that by far the most common reaction ranges from dismay to anger. Our second goal is to demonstrate the extent of the significant opposition to the project on the part of the people of Osterville and Barnstable in general. As of this moment, we have 1,347 names on our online and paper petitions to oppose the project. People from every one of Barnstable's 7 villages have signed. Most are from Osterville, but many people, especially from Centerville and Marston's Mill. We can be found at change.org under our group's name, Save Greater Dowses Beach. I want to give a shout out to our friend Stacy Gunther and her little dog Emma too, who are always at the beach talking with people about this, signatures on the petition. And Susie McLean, our artist extraordinaire, who's been working so hard making connections for us We have Hector Gunther over there, Adam's here. I'm probably missing someone on the working group. Bob Schulte is very much a fellow traveler. He's from Centerville, but we love him still. So I just want to thank all those folks for the very, very hard work we've been doing. Stacy and her helpers have gathered over 500 signatures on the paper petitions. These are significant numbers, but we are certainly not done yet. I hope it was really clear to everyone involved at the November 16th meeting with MAKKAY that local sentiment is overwhelmingly against the landing at DOWSES. Our third goal is just to stay organized to fight against the landings as planned with federal, state, county, and local permitting entities. On the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, we submitted our group's public response, focusing mostly on the estuary nature of the area, its de facto status as a wildlife sanctuary and refuge, the fact that it provides waterfront access to mobility impaired individuals, and the somewhat questionable advantage association with this company brings to the town. We plan to follow up on each and every one of these points as regulatory review proceeds and beyond. We've been in touch with agencies such as the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination, the Cape Cod Commission, and the Energy Facilities Siting Board, just so that they know we're out there and we have on. We're planning a meeting with the Falmouth Heights Mara Vista Neighborhood Association and others who have fought off the use of public beaches to land these cables. We've begun an online fundraising campaign on the GoFundMe platform to provide us with resources and the capacity for professional consultation as we go forward. I do have to say how mildly and somewhat pleasantly surprised our group was to read the town's public response to Avangrid Renewables environmental notification form, which they had to file with me, but that's what we responded to. The town noted serious concerns about possible harm to the environment, especially to the causeway and the culvert that bisects that causeway. That causeway and the culvert are essential to the health of both of the bays and the taxa that live in those waters. They also noted something we didn't think of, but really caused pause, and that's the potential for harm to the aquifer. One of the things they said in their response was the aquifer may very well extend seaward to as far as where the HDD operation is going to happen, and there's a real danger that puncturing into that aquifer could contaminate it with salt water. We have a long fight ahead of us, but as I said on November 16th, we're not going anywhere. I usually don't talk extemporaneously, but I do want to tell a little bit of story, and I'll try not to make it too long. And this came to me last night as I listened into the Zoom meeting that Avangrid ran. Ever since this started, we've heard about a 3-year project, a project that's going to last for 3 years. Someone who is a town official told me in the 3rd year, that's when they'll dig up the causeway, as though it's so far away, you don't have to worry about it. And I hadn't been corrected on that at all. The ENF itself says the project is going to start in 2025 and end in 2028. That encompasses 3 construction seasons, beginning at, on right after Labor Day, going all the way through Memorial Day. But in this Zoom meeting last night, Avangrid personnel started talking about a 2-year cycle. And a person wrote in and said, can you clarify? We've heard 3 years. Now you're talking 2 years. What gives? Please clarify. It's 2 years. That's it. There was no explanation for the discrepancy. And, I'm just going to ask that nobody rush forward and try to correct the record. I'd rather that someone in writing told the Osterville Village Association what the truth is. Nevertheless, even if it's 1 year, I would still oppose this. But it's that sort of thing. I have been accused of spreading false information. It doesn't, feel great to have people say that about me. For example, the town purchased the area in 1946 for 30,000, not 40,000, as I wrote. I'll try to correct that in the future. Jennifer, where's Jennifer? If you have any more of those documents, I'd love to have them. I did write to the town and asked for a copy of the warrant from the March 1946 town meeting. They got it to me in 48 hours. And the folks of Barnstable unanimously approved the purchase of that area for the purpose of a bathing beach in 1946. So I'm not perfect, but I don't go around spreading false information on purpose. I would have to say, though, that as far as this discrepancy that I noted last night, that sort of thing doesn't actually give me a lot of confidence in this company and the things they've been telling us. So that's my little story. And I think, did you want to have folks ask any questions? Or?
Questions for Suzanne while she's here? Go ahead and
Hi,
back.
so my name is O.B.P.A. and I live in Osterville. That was a great introduction you gave me. I'm impressed by this group tonight. There's also other things going on around town. The Jenkins Cranberry Bog, there's a fight going on. Last night I was at a meeting at the Centerville Community Building regarding another battle going on with the people to stay Twin Girls. Now, this is the third one that I know of. This is the biggest group I've seen. I just like to say that there was could you also add to your list, there was a group of people that stopped the line from going into Lewis Bay in Yarmouth.
Yes.
That's why they moved up the coast to Craigville, when the town jumped on the money like they're doing right now. They're looking at the money. It's a money grab. I thank you all for participating, and hope we can put a stop to this. It makes no sense to me at all.
No.
Something that's 30 miles offshore to bring it in up the coast for people down the coast to Connecticut.
I agree. We've made contact with those folks, which is great. We'll be meeting with them shortly. So, one thing that feels great is that suddenly we don't feel like we're out in the wilderness crying. And the folks from Falmouth were told by Mayflower Wind, we're going to go to Brayton Point, but we'll be back, which I found to be so threatening. And so they are not giving up their fight. They're going to stay in it. And hopefully the folks from Yarmouth will help us and give us some insight as well. I think we're going to get more active, recognizing the fact that there are 3 other possibilities to land electrical cables at areas that are already industrialized. Folks in this room have made the suggestion, for example, that they use the 40% functioning Cape Cod Canal facility that really only comes online to produce electricity when it's needed. There's the Pilgrim Nuclear that has been decommissioned but is hooked into the grid. There's Brayton Point. If they would only collaborate with Mayflower Wind, get together and do something that makes more sense. I think our group's next step, and this might be getting a little ahead of my working group, so guys, I apologize. I think our next step is to ask the state to step in and stop this kind of Wild West gold rush mentality that these companies have, that they can just throw cables across Nantucket Sound onto public beaches. And, we shouldn't even bother to care about it. So I think we'll just, we're going to, ramp up our arguments in those directions, I think.
The intersection at the end of my street and here was is that Nye and Lumbert Mill Road is all marked out with all kinds of different colors painted. Each color means a different thing, utility.
Yes.
And it's for soil tests. So
Yeah.
it's coming down the road. They're doing soil tests all the way up by me.
Yeah.
And I'll end with this by saying, someone said this on the radio or somewhere the other day. If Ted Kennedy was here, this would not be happening.
Oh, this is true. This is quite true. Is that it? Oh,
Sure.
this is something over there.
I was trying to watch 2 Zooms last night. I'm trying to watch that one. One is the DEP one.
Right.
Talking about the septic issues and everything else.
Right.
Amazing how these things are happening at the same time. It did seem interesting when I was here for the meeting we had 2 weeks ago here, standing room only, where, a big part of their presentation was digging up the roads once, right? Put the sewers in. And all these other rules that they want. It's overwhelming to keep track of all these things that are going on and how they interface and all these different. Just want to thank you for your diligence, but I'm trying to pay attention. It's just overwhelming.
I think the people of Barnstable are going to be going through an awful lot. My husband and I, when we heard about the sewering project, and we live on a street that's going to be sewered in phase 1, we were happy. We said, you know what? Cape Cod should have done this 30 years ago. So we are happy. We care about clean water. We care about 3 bays. But to layer this on top of all that work seems to be just, like one step too far. I'm just not sure that it's worth it. I know it's not worth it. I should say that way.
Worth it to who?
Bob,
Right, worth it.
Worth it to who?
Bob, did you have a question?
Oh, no, I was just gonna, after you're done.
Oh, okay, I'm done.
Oh,
Okay.
I hope you talked about the DOWSES and the information from when the sale took place.
Yeah,
You have those documents anywhere?
Yes, I
Where
do.
we can find that, because I actually called David Anthony in town for those. And he was actually looking at those.
he gave me
on the
a
town side.
full copy of the warrant from 1946. And it's Article 43, and I'll get that to you. It's not very extensive. It just says unanimously approved by town meeting.
And
those
Jen-
were the
Jen, do you
days.
have documents?
I do.
What kind of documents do you have?
I have documents similar to what Suzanne was talking about. I can send them to you.
Yeah, you send them to the board as soon as possible, because we want to
Yes.
make sure.
Yeah, I found the deed in the Barnstable County Registry of Deed and printed that out. It doesn't include the sale price. But the sale price is listed in the warrant. Yeah,
But there
yeah.
should be some ancillary documents also that went along with the process.
I asked for everything, but that's all I got was the warrant.
Do you have
So,
other
I don't
documents?
have any other documents other than the warrant, and this is thanks to a gentleman, Dennis Kelly, who works for the town of Barnstable in the public works for a long time. And he brought this all to the museum several years ago.
yeah, I did it through an FOIA request, a FOIA request, and it was rapidly sent my way. So it was easy. So.
More quickly. Thursday, at the Centerville Library at 5 o'clock, with the presentation by Park City Wind. How's that? connected?
Well, I know that folks in Centerville really didn't want to see the Park City thing go in, but that, I don't know, Bob, maybe you can talk to that. It sort of got a little more advanced than certainly Commonwealth Wind.
Yeah, that's, if you watched by chance last night's presentation by Gray, it's a similar update to the residents of Centerville on the status of the Park City Wind, which is further along in the permitting process. And Gray said that they're gonna run their route right down Main Street, Centerville, which is what a large group of citizens objected to, but it's gonna be just their update at the library. So I assume it'll be very similar to what they did last night for the Commonwealth. So.
I think people should know that this Dowses Beach proposal is by far the largest one. They're talking 3 of these electrical export cables coming in under the sand, coming up into the parking lot. And I remember in August, I think it was the second meeting, an emergency meeting we had. And I said, they're going to come up the causeway, because in my mind, there was no other way to get this electricity off of the barrier spit. And someone in the audience said, they're not going to dig up the causeway. And that's exactly what they want to do. And if you, I would recommend, if you're a Facebooker or, it's probably say to read their response, because what they had to say about the danger to the causeway is chilling. It really is. This is the culvert will not, they're not sure that the culvert can stand the weight of the duct bank. And that would destroy the culvert. It would destroy the exchange of waters between those 2 bays. It would kill a lot of the taxa that live in those 2 bays, especially the fish that use Finney's Bay to spawn. I don't think this is worth the risk. We just, we're very, how can I say this, singularly minded. We want them to go to a much more appropriate place to do this. This is not an appropriate place to land their cables. It just isn't. So. Yeah.
Cynthia Harris, I also want to know what our new town councilor is going to do to support this project.
Well, I guess I'll sit down then. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, John. Yeah, and Cindy, thank you for your question. So I feel like there has been, for me, in my experience with this project, sort of two different phases. One of the phases was the first one when I was starting to get to know, like, a lot of folks a lot about this past summer. And then a phase that's happened more recently with announcements that have come from Avangrid about the viability of their project. In the summertime, it seemed very clear to me that there was a couple of macro aspects that were unchangeable. Namely, that the feds and the state have laws in place, including our 2021 roadmap law, that really identify emissions targets over time, 2030, 2040, 2050, that were going to have to be reached by our state to reduce carbon emissions. And the federal government had leased large portions of the ocean bottom just south of Martha's Vineyard to any company that wanted to bid on that lease to help effectively Massachusetts and the country achieve two things that I believe that there's relative consensus about. I think that the United States is really interested in creating as much energy independence as possible, so it doesn't get drawn into foreign affairs that generally can lead to bloodshed, as well as trying to drive down the amount of carbon that we release in the burning of fossil fuels to create electricity. And so those are two, I think, macro goals that both the country has, as well as our Commonwealth. And we have presently have leadership in an administration in DC and an incoming and the outgoing government in Boston that seems to have voted and spoken with a lot of frequency about how projects like this amount of wind would have a material effect on effectively us getting energy independence and reducing carbon. I think those two ideas still remain like an overarching umbrella on which I understand this project. However, subsequently, after I was elected on the town council in the beginning of September, Avangrid proactively came forward to the public and their investors and have said, hey, at this point in time, with changes in the Fed rate, the changes in the cost of steel, other backups in the supply chain, and a whole bunch of other macroeconomic factors, including the war in Ukraine, that the power purchase agreement that was agreed to in March of this year was no longer going to pencil out for them to make eventually a project, They've opened up their books to the state and said, presently, it's not viable the way, you know, the math doesn't work out with all these new inputs that weren't the same when they signed the contracts in March. Well, that's a big material difference that raises questions for me as well and changes the dynamic a little bit, which is generally that right now, they, being Avangrid, have a contract with the state at a certain amount of cents per kilowatt hour. And they feel like they need to go up from that to make it work. The outgoing administration, I feel like, is probably trying to help the incoming administration to find a way to make this increase happen so that this bill, this 2020 roadmap to net zero, which is something that we're trying to achieve in this state by 2050, stays on target. And so they're in a good faith space right now. And we know that good faith can generally sort of unravel in certain things like a handoff from one administration to a next administration. So I'm not 100% clear that generally that this can necessarily happen in the way that it's been proposed. And so that has been generally why it is that I now have questions. But the overall idea of what is going to happen possibly has been proposed, I'm generally in favor of.
Okay, my question is.
Yes, ma'am.
We elected you.
Yes.
You work for us.
Sure.
Are you going to support your contingency?
I think Suzanne Connolly, seriously, I give you a lot of props. You are capturing and organizing and directing political will in this village, in this town. That should be applauded. That's not something that. Yeah, appreciate that, Paul. And so I was just saying that, Suzanne, I think you're doing a great job. And it's not sycophancy. I'm just saying that I think that we don't generally get involved in contentious issues at this level. And I think you're doing a great job of representing folks and pulling them together in opposition to the landing at DOWSES. And I think that that is also a material change from when I was elected on September 6th. This is, 1,300 signatures. That's legitimate. I'm not paying attention to that. I do raise a general philosophical question, which is that, you do hire, it's a representative position. I'm not trying to piss anybody off, but like you have to, you hire somebody to partially use their judgment as well as to represent folks. And I'm not certain that the clear schism in this community presently is like overwhelmingly obviously against it. This room quite frequently has gatherings in which people express a lot of anger and concerns about a whole bunch of elements of different projects. I'm just saying that the village is closer to 3,500 people, right? I am elected to a precinct that also includes portions of Centerville, Marston's Mills, and Katuitt. And they have a lot to say about this as well. And so I do totally recognize every aspect of an amazing job of organizing opposition to this project, but I do spend an enormous time, if not 50+% of my time, on aspects of this particular conversation. And this room quite frequently sees the opposition, and in, I would say, the vast majority of a bunch of other conversations I have, there is a lot of support. And so it might not be abundantly apparent to you, ma'am, or others that support exists. But there are people who come to all these meetings and sit on their hands and don't say anything, because quite frequently this room can be intimidating to folks who just want to participate in a conversation. And I've heard that's been shared with me multiple times. And so that's on them for not getting up and sharing their opinion in favor of this project. But there is a considerable amount of support in this village as well for the landing at DOWSES and the ultimate benefit come from a project like this. It's Adam, right?
Yeah.
Hey.
I appreciate the email back.
Right.
I know we
Yeah.
haven't met up yet, but I guess a lot of things is how you ask a question, right?
Sure.
So I kind of wonder if you said, hey, you're in favor of green energy. We have these targets. This is great. There's going to be revenue coming to the town.
Yeah.
Because they've got only one substation they've actually studied there in the queue for, right? They looked at 10 spots, but I think looked at was like, look at a map. Nah, not that one. Because they only did an interconnection study, which is formally how you look at grid interconnection at the one. How many people in the town would would answer the question? You said, if you're in favor of this, you want the tax revenue, right? You want the green. Do you want to go in through an industrial site or do you want to go in through a public beach? Like, I don't know if people have thought about that way. Avangrid's kind of got their hands tied because they've only got the one substation. So I just don't know if people really had the question framed to them appropriately. You can go through Hyannis Harbor that's already built up. There are other places you can go in that aren't a public beach.
Yeah, so I think Hyannis Harbor was looked at, and I think part of the problem is an engineering issue, which is that we all look at our roads as a place that maybe we drive on, but our roads are also dramatic. They're large conveyors of infrastructure, and all our roads have a number of jobs going on underneath them. And we're trying to add another job in the future, which will be, the expanded sewer. And so all the roads in Hyannis, due to the capacity of the human density, are considerably fuller. Like there's actual stuff under there. The wastewater, there's the comm line or the Hyannis water lines, there's storm runoff, there's national grid. And so those spaces physically can't actually be tapped for carrying this under the roadway.
I disagree. I lived in Manhattan for many years, and I'm pretty sure you can put more under the roadway than in Hyannis.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, possibly. I can't make that comparison, but I don't think that was just, so it was definitely looked at to go into Hyannis.
They did reference difficulty in finding parking, which gives me concern if they're going to have a hard time optimizing parking versus building windmills. But
I think parking is also a word for staging. It's construction staging, and yeah, so it's really about having the vehicles next to the space that they're
I
working.
think it really comes down to money in terms of having to buy private businesses or other things and basically stage it versus having it on public land. I think that's the root of the issue.
Alright.
It's money.
Okay, yeah. No,
Sorry.
Can I ask you something?
yeah, definitely.
Can you quantify, as Suzanne has, with 1,350 signatures, we've had a vote, a survey in this village also.
Yeah,
one
right.
against this.
Yeah.
Can you quantify your anecdotal statements? I've been here and I've seen about 4 or 5 people that are for this adamantly.
Yeah.
And not all, but a number of them have a personal, business, or financial interest in this project going forward. Okay, the town has the same thing. The other town councilors, some of them do. There's actually, they're voting on form-based zoning. It actually, the last town council meeting was Thursday. They're talking about form-based zoning, if everybody doesn't know about it. It's a way to densify downtown Hyannis through the business district. But they build big, huge buildings up to the sidewalk and all the way back to the end of the lot without any extra parking. And they don't care about what goes in zoning wise, they just want to have it so that there's a higher density. Okay, and sewage allows that, and we'll allow that here also. But the town council has postponed that now twice, that vote on it, because a large percentage of the councilors, enough that they cannot pass it, have personal, financial, or business interests in that district. Okay, I've seen people sitting here that I know have a personal, financial, business district, and they seem to support this. I'd like to see you come up with some kind of a survey or signatures to support your position where you stand. 1,350 people signing a petition in this village that says, say, 3,500 or this district is a large amount, a very large amount,
Yeah.
considering if you've ever done this before in public. I'd like to see where you stand and come up with quantifying that you have the support of this coming on Dowses Beach. And I also like to point out, there are other ways to do this. There's a lot of arguments that come forward, and one is Zeke Crocker from the Free Grace Preservation. He likes to get up and say, well, you know, we've got a climate change problem. Yes, we do. And you're going against actually having the wind power company. The point is, we're not against the wind power company. It's how it's come and where it's coming. So the argument is sort of a canard that we're all against wind power. It's a question of you can do wind power clean instead of dirty. Okay, and there's actually, I'm going to post this. This came out in the last couple of days. It's an article at WBUR in Boston, and it talked to not only the Brattle Group, which is a group that we already posted about how they want to make sure that all these lines that are actually coming from all these different projects are all negotiated separately. They're all going to go through Nantucket Bay one way, and they're all going to dig it up in some different way. And then they get on shore, and it's like spaghetti. They're going everywhere. It's not cost effective to do that. It's not rate effective to do that. And there are ways that have been proposed to do that in a better way. This article actually that I'll post on the O.B.A website, reading this, talks about actually making the wind power out in the sound, make those the power grid out there, not on land. So with this article explains how the cost of going to all these different villages, going to all these people's beaches is something that can be completely avoided. Okay, with only 1 or 2 high transmission lines to a larger, heavier degree than what they're planning on coming on here, can go to industrial sites and avoid all this public running through town, and also will save the public money. Okay, and this has actually been brought up, and but instead of they actually in this article they talk about how you think of a human blood system. You have capillaries, then you have vessels, then you have arteries, then you have main arteries. Well, these are going into the capillary areas. They're coming from offshore, coming here. Why aren't you going into the main artery? What they're talking about and avoiding all that is coming up with larger, heavy-duty megawatt power lines, but only coming with a few, and then making this area out on shore an actual power grid in itself. So that wouldn't have to be made onshore, it would be made offshore. And it makes a lot of sense. Okay, and since Avangrid is going back to renegotiate their contracts, and they said it could be up to 9 months, a year to do this, it seemed the time to time out and actually research some of these better alternatives that don't have every one of our pristine beaches throughout, not just Barnstable, but all the way from Maine to Florida, where this can be done in a more logical and more environmentally sensitive way than digging 17 or 18 different plows through Nantucket Sound. in More logical fashion. So I suggest you all read this, and there's also the Brown report that was on there from 2020. This article actually refers to that report about how to consolidate these lines and go to industrial sites and bypass all these beaches and our pristine environment, and also keep them from tearing up the whole entire town and doing so. So anyway, there's other ways to do that. I just want to let you know that we'll put this on the website for you guys to talk about. And any other questions for Paul?
I have a question. So, hi,
Hey, Heather.
half of my immediate family can only access the water by using the handicap pier and wheelchair. Are you committed to protecting that pier for people like them and others, 365 days a year, forevermore? That's the question.
That's the question. Okay, yeah, right, okay. But Heather, are you just talking about during the period of time during construction when like the far end of the Dowses
Yes.
parking lot would be closed?
It's confused me. When I saw the picture, it looked like
Yeah.
they're gonna consume that whole space. That pier is used all year
Yeah.
long by
Yeah.
so many people, for people who walk there, all kinds of people. And people like my family who actually require the pier or they're out of luck.
Yeah.
I think my personal view is that should be it's an ADA pier, it was federally funded, the town backed it.
Yes, right.
It should be, every one of our public
Yeah.
officials should fully support 365 access.
Totally. Yep.
All right.
Yeah. And so I do. And I'm on the Disabilities Commission,
Great.
just so you know. And so this is a topic of conversation there. And during the construction period of time, Avangrid has made an offer to the town to extend effectively, how there's from the shower point out, there's about a 20-meter long raised walkway, to extend that all the way to the shore and make it completely wheelchair accessible and friendly during the entire period of time of any closures of the far end of the parking lot.
Which is another way to say they're gonna block the handicap pier.
Can I follow up on?
Yeah, I think that is accurate, Heather, that there will be a period of time in which the far end of the parking lot will be closed. I think there's been a lot of overall sort of acceptance of the fact that there will be interruptions and inconveniences of a whole bunch of sorts with this project. And so there would be a period of time in which the far end would be closed while they're pulling one of the duck banks in. So yeah, that's accurate. And I think Avangrid is trying to make a concession to that reality by creating an alternative during the period of time that's closed. Yeah.
Suzanne, would you like to?
Yeah, when the causeway is being trenched, really, with a 9-foot wide duct bank, no one will be able to get out to Dowses Beach, no one. Now, what the town said in their response, I think I mentioned, gave me chills. There is the possibility that this 8-foot deep, 9-foot wide trench that will turn into a 12-foot wide trench under the culvert would cause catastrophic failure of the causeway. You have to read the town's response. They don't think the causeway is a suitable place to run this duct bag, which will have 12 ducks in it. Ducts, D-U-C-T-S. Last night, I asked them, why are there 12 when you only need 9? The answer was vague. I'm worried they're gonna come back with a 4th. They're saying they need the 3 extra in case there's a failure of one of the cables. But that would mean they're coming back. I'm more worried about the causeway itself, because if that fails, our entire beautiful Dowses Beach will be gone to us for heaven knows how long. And I think that's going to be a major point we'll be raising with the EFSB. This is just not a suitable place to do this industrial size utility infrastructure installation. It is not. So, and I really sympathize. That's why we let the MCAD know that we are opposed to this, because people who are mobility impaired and who are used to using the pier, that's their waterfront access. Those of us who can move around easily have other places we could go to see the water. People who are mobility impaired use that fishing pier to be on the waterfront, and it should never be blocked to them.
Sir, do you have a question? No, just for you. Okay. Any other questions for Paul or on the issue? Okay, moving forward, one thing I want to bring up, we had the survey back in, last month, and it was a 10-to-1 against, basically, against this coming onto Dows's Beach. If it did come, it was more, the alternate routes would be on East Bay Road versus through the middle of town. And, we haven't discussed that as a board and whether we want to support that, finding as a board and make a decision on that. Any comments? Yeah.
Well, I don't think we have any reason not to support it. I mean, it is a survey that was taken, and I think we should just accept the results of that survey. I mean, it was taken, people had a chance to vote, and it was 10-to-1 against not going on to Dows's Beach, and if it did go on to Dows's, it was also 10-to-1 not going through the business area. And that was the results of that survey, signed by over 200 people. I don't think we have any option. We can't say we can't accept it. I mean, we took the survey and that was the results, and I think we should just accept the results of that survey for the record.
Put forward a motion, any discussion on that?
Well, I move that the O.B.A. accepts the results of the poll taken regarding the landing on Dows's Beach of the Avon Bridge project as follows: 10-to-1 in the opposition to the project landing on Dows's Beach, and 10-to-1 in favor of the route up Old Mill Road instead of Main Street if it does land on Dows's Beach, with 200+ votes being cast.
We want to have a vote in favor of that position also? As a board?
The motion is to accept the results.
Yeah.
And so it's out of the, that would become out of the record.
Okay. Do you have any discussion on that motion?
I move we accept the motion as stated.
Okay, we'll go for a vote. All in favor of the O.B.A. of accepting the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, none. Thank you, Gail. Moving on to old business. I put down the Osterville Bay School, Paul. Because we were talking about that last time we met. Just a little background. The Osterville Bay School has been in play now since, I believe, 2008. And this organization has had countless meetings about what to do with the Bay School. A lot of those things have actually now occurred. We've got new tennis courts. We've got the fields all in already, most of them. We're still waiting on a playground and some other issues. But it's been quite a while. It's been 13 years at least till now. And first thing, the town already has, the finances already voted and approved it to demolish the building.
Yes.
That sits there, the community playground building. Right. So can we get you to work on?
Demolition is,
find out when that's going to be?
Yes, yeah. So I would say the only two elements, John, that are still like on track and moving their way through the budgetary and sort of approval process are the demo of that building in center field of the softball field, as well as the playground. And the playground will happen between the tennis courts and that Verizon building. Those two are on the schedule and will be part of conversations in regards to the 24 budget, as well as I think I'm forgetting my CLP fund, the formula, but there's going to be the general fund as well as other sources to get those two portions presently done. Like I said, the tennis court's done. That softball field is done and can be rented by folks now, leagues and the such. There is a question about whether or not when the community center and center field comes down, whether or not to put up public restrooms. That has been a consistent request, as well as the idea of having a paved walk surface that sort of allows people to do non-street walking. That no pun intended, like not walking on the streets, and then improved tree landscaping.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those elements are still part of the discussion. What is not part of the discussion anymore on the town level really is the large building, the structure with an indoor basketball court and community rentable rooms and the such. And like an outdoor performance space and a pollinator garden that's fenced off. That I think came out with a dollar number 5-7 years ago, somewhere around, I felt like $6 or $8 million. And I think the building, yeah.
I think
It was
more.
in more, well, yeah. And so I think that has been dropped. And I feel like this structure in particular and the firehouse with voting, a lot of the local community needs are met. I think this particular issue about the wind project has put stress on this room to see if we can get 125, 150 people in one room in the village. And so that has breathed new air into the idea of creating that building, but there isn't any consensus at the town. But as far as that the playground and the demo, that will happen.
Okay,
Yeah.
do you have any figures or?
The only figure I really
to
have,
be some kind of playground engineering and prior to going forward. So we'll need a consultant or something in play. We've talked to them already years ago. They'll probably have a different consultant.
Yeah.
But considering the space is not going to be used for the building, and may be able to put a fairly good sized playground in that area.
I mean, yeah, the area that was scoped out originally was that space between the tennis courts and the
Yes, that's where
Verizon
we're
and
talking.
infrastructure. Yeah,
I think that
yeah.
would be the safest.
Yeah.
The other one I want to question is that one other thing that was in our plan is in deep left field, right in front of the building that's still standing.
Right.
We were talking about a fenced in basketball / street hockey court. The reason why you fence it is because street hockey.
Yeah.
And I don't see that as anything on the plans at this point.
No,
Keep
yeah.
that in mind.
Oh, yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely will.
Yeah.
I like both those things. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, so you'll give
But the
us.
bathrooms is really sort of like, there's a lot of consensus about needing
Yeah.
access to public restrooms for those participating in anything at those fields, but also we don't really have any in the village as a whole.
That was
Yeah.
considered part of this.
Yeah, right,
Coming up
yeah.
with the playground.
Yeah,
So
right.
we make sure
yeah,
that's
so
still in, but
yes,
that's, the septic is still there for that building,
right,
and you could use that, so, that's very important, and also with the kids there.
yeah,
So if you
Yeah.
can get back to us and let us know.
I will, yeah,
I'd
sure.
Appreciate it.
happy to.
Any other old business?
I have one question at the top.
Yes, yeah.
You say the fields are completed and ready to be played
I
on?
think they were ready by October 15th, actually, in the town's eyes, yeah. And so they outreach to the various leagues that rent other fields in other, Dennis Yarmouth in particular, have a very strong co-ed adult softball league.
But it
And
seems a shame if they're done, that nobody's using them. It's a beautiful field.
yeah, so proactively, our Parks and Recs have reached out to the teams, the leagues that would possibly be interested in playing on that field. And as of today, nobody is signed up to use it or to pay the fee. And there was no change in the fee from any other softball field rental by a league. Obviously, people can just walk out there and generally do what they want.
It'd be nice if the town let the public know that they can take the children down there and play ball if they wanted to.
Yeah,
If they can.
That's a good point, Gail. I don't think that there is any physical restriction on anybody accessing that space presently, because I was definitely walking around it the other day. So you can definitely go use it right now. Yeah, but you're right. It hasn't been like, hey, this field is open. But there's also just a new sign that's put up asking people not to walk and let their dogs use it as a bathroom. Yeah, that's the only thing that's different.
Well, one of the reasons.
Didn't
Yes.
the town,
Hey.
didn't the town hire a public relations person last year or something? Get that kind of information out to the public?
Yeah, that's not something I'm familiar with, Rick, to be honest with you, like a PR firm or a PR person, communications.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we have a communications director on the town, like Lynn Foyant, and she definitely has included updates on that field in her Friday newsletter. But as far as a separate individual than that, I'm not aware of that, but I can look into it.
Also specifically, Paul, that field was made for adult softball.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, and the Patty Machado was, before she retired,
Yeah.
was a lead on that, and they said that instead of Little League fields, we want adult softball because there's demand for that. So maybe they can find another way to reach out to those groups and get them to take advantage of it,
Yeah.
because that's what it was built for in the first place.
Right, yeah.
And I'm hoping that the word is still out there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I hear, like, I've definitely driven, when I first found out that we were putting a softball field in, I was surprised. And you should know it cost us $800,000. I didn't think it really matched up with our local needs. And, but it does seem like there is a strong enough interest throughout the region in adult softball leagues that they thought it was worth putting in that version of recreation versus all the other ones that could have been considered.
The town lobbied actually. for
Yeah.
that, And we thought that was fun, so hopefully we can find something.
Yeah.
Um,
It was supposed to generate revenue and fees as well as sort of promote folks post-game to go out and enjoy our restaurants.
maybe they can reach out to some of these leagues.
Oh, they definitely have, because I've been like, you know, this has been viable for over a month now, right?
Well, it's a little late in the season, but I think
Yeah.
by next spring, they probably want to do it. Okay, thanks, Paul. Any
Yeah.
other, old business?
Excuse me, a comment for Susan. Great presentation, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
One of the representatives from Avangrid, it wasn't Ken, it was lady, mentioned that the life of the cables is 25 years. That took me back. They're gonna do all of this construction, all of this work, the cables, like what happens after 25 years?
Well, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management came out with a ruling that said, once the life of the project is over, they can either walk away from the turbines that are out in the ocean or remove them down to 15 feet below the seabed. However, they are allowed to leave the cables in place. I'm in the town's response, they did question decommissioning. And I'm not, I would love to see the answer to that. So would this company, even though BOEM says you can just leave the cables there, would they agree to come back in 25 years and do all the deconstruction work that would have to happen to remove all their equipment? I'm doubting that would happen. One of my worries about the future, at the end of the life of this project, is that beach is just going to look like a bunch of cables that have come up from the ground. And I just don't think there's any way they can control that, or I'm not sure they would care at that point about what Dowses Beach would look like.
Well, I think some of the economics of one of these infrastructure programs means that like a company like Avangrid spends decades paying off all the various folks who help them finance it. And then when that happens, they're hoping to sign a second power purchase agreement like the one that they have now. And that's when a company like a big, large international energy conglomerate actually makes their money. I think in the first 25 years, they're just paying folks off for, supporting financially the effort to make it. And then in the second power purchase agreement, that's when they effectively make their profit. And
But
so
the
I
cables
think,
themselves have a limited life. And I've been doing a lot of reading about these cables, even the new ones, and they require constant repair and maintenance. And I said on November 16th, the beach will not be ours anymore if this happens. Because even in the summertime, they'll be coming in, going into the 3 vaults that will be in the parking lot. If they don't destroy the causeway anyway. And you're going to see barges in Nantucket Sound from the beaches for the rest of time, because they pull these cables up, they splice them. Usually it's the fiber optics that somehow fail, or the heat being generated by the conductive materials ruin the fiber optics. So, I mean, it's an industry that has a lot of problems. And I will tell you that this would so change life in the villages and towns that are along Nantucket Sound.
yeah, I take issue with a couple of your characterizations.
Sure you
Yeah,
would.
yeah.
It's fine. Paul, I do a lot of reading every day. And the things I read are scholarly journal articles. They're not, nutbags talking about, all the problems. It's these things happen. These are problems. And to just turn the other way and say, we want them to come here because we want them to help with our sewering project.
Well, I
with
think you
yours.
read the town's response,
The town's response was.
and I appreciate you highlighting it. And
well,
if you
it
didn't
was-
think that I participated in the creation of that, you'd be wrong. We're trying to turn the screws on the potential partner here.
Well,
to
like
make
I
sure the
said on my
details-
Facebook page, I'm hoping it's not bargaining positions. I'm hoping it's actually serious environmental concerns, especially as they relate to the aquifer. If these folks ruin the aquifer, then where are we?
Yeah.
And, anyway, the only thing I didn't like about the town's response was they talked about the viability of the project. And they said, we really need to know as soon as possible because we might want to pursue other companies to do this. And that was the piece that
Yeah.
I didn't like reading. Why would we run around looking for another company to do this to Dowses Beach? We don't want them to do this to Dowses Beach. A straight line beach is terrible enough. An estuarine environment like the Greater Dowses Beach area is a whole other story. And it's just so inappropriate as a landing place.
Back over here, sir.
Where can we get a copy of the town's response?
It's on the town manager's portion of the town's website, and it's very much highlighted. It's the most recent business. So, yes,
We'll
yeah, town
also
of Barnstable.
We'll
Yeah.
also post it on the O.B.A.
Oh, okay, great, yeah.
Website with the other documents we were talking about.
I linked it on our Facebook page as well, Save Greater Dowses.
And our reply to the MIPA, National Environmental Protection, is here, and that'll be online tomorrow if you read that also. Some of our questions about what's going on.
And I think the Cape Cod Commission has also gone on the record with theirs, and Mass Department of Fisheries as well also has responded, and I think at least 2 citizens so far. Your response and another gentleman whose name escapes me, but another citizen has put in an actual response, official response.
One more, you had said before that there's good faith negotiations, I think you said with the state, because all the costs have gone up since they made their deal, they're gonna try to figure it out. That uncertainty, gives me cause for pause, because I think of the dollars invested in this, but also when I was here for the presentation before, they kept saying, well, all our electric bills are gonna go down, right? Well, if all their costs are going up, how are they gonna lower their bills? So to me, it's one thing to do it for the environment, but to think that we're gonna be saving money out of our own pockets, I have to be a little doubtful about that.
Bob, do you have a question?
Yeah, just one question for Councilor Cusack and then another comment. I'd be curious, I asked Lynn Poyant, the Director of Communications, I think it would be interesting for both the Osterville Village Association and citizens to see what the town's response looked like for the ENF for Park City Wind, which was the Centerville, as well as Vineyard Wind. One, I'm curious to see if they even responded or if they just, ENF responded, the town didn't respond. But I've asked for that. Lynn indicated she was going to look for that. But you as a counselor, I know that predates your role as a counselor, since it was, I think, in 2020. But I'd be very curious to compare the town's response to Park City Wind and Vineyard Wind to what they're saying now for Commonwealth. So
That's a great
I'll
idea.
ask if you
Yeah,
could,
okay.
as a counselor, perhaps you could get that, provide that
Cool.
to the OVA.
Yes, Bob. Yeah.
And then just a follow-up comment to one of the gentlemen who spoke earlier. I also was at the meeting that was yesterday in Centerville for the Save Twin Brooks update. And I thought there were some comments that focus was more on the Save Twin Brooks project. But one of the speakers, and I forget his last name, it was Mark. He is, I think, the CEO of the body that oversees all the various land trusts on the Cape, the Barnstable Land Trust, the Kituitt, all the various villages and towns. And he has been in that position, I believe, for 30 years, involved with numerous projects that involve environmental sensitivity, whether it be Save Twin Brooks and the golf course or something like the wind farms. And he cited several examples where he has said that over the years, as often the citizens have had petitions or signed letters, the thing that works the best if you have a position is to go en masse to the town council, the Cape Cod Commission. And he pointed out that over the last couple of years with Zoom meetings, it's been very convenient for our officials to basically listen to people speak and then just say nothing. There's no one in the room with them. And he said, repeated several examples where when counselors are faced with 100, 150 citizens, telling them how they feel. That's about the only time you're gonna see some action. And one of the comments, and I thought it was particularly appropriate, was made by one of the members, said that if you look at our council now, how it's compromised, with the exception of one or two, basically, when it comes to standing up to developers or representing their constituents, none of our current town councilors are gonna win any Profile and Courage Awards. You know, people need to be there in front of them and tell them how they feel. Writing letters, signing petitions is great, but when you want to put, get action, you need to be there. So just saying, looking down the road, whether it be zoning for say Twin Brooks, whether it's town council approval on something here that's going to change zoning, people need to show up and speak their mind.
Yeah.
So, and now that the council meetings are back in live, alive, they are back, they're now being held live as well as Zoom. But citizens need to think about showing up at those meetings and telling the councilors how they feel, rather than just coming to these meetings and expressing their opinions.
I'd also like to add to that. All this stuff going on, you have the wind power coming through the village, that's going to allow the sewage to come to the village. At one time, it wasn't coming through our village until this came up. That's also going to allow zoning changes here. There's a lot of the zoning changes, things that need changing here depend on water quality. Okay, so there is a group of people that really are, and many in the town are looking to densify all of our. Okay, and that's in the plan for quite a long time. And this is going to allow that. So what will happen to allow that is changes of zoning. Okay, just because we go ahead and do sewage doesn't mean we have to add to it or change our zoning to allow multifamily by right. It's something that I've heard that's out there that people want to do in our town. You heard at the last LCP meeting that was held right here, you heard the chairman of the long range comprehensive plan. First thing he did when he started talking about the LCP, very first thing is talking about how Osterville in their last 2010 LCP that the villages used to do on their own, that the town wants to take away from the villages, is that we didn't discuss changes in our zoning. And that maybe have to be readdressed, where other villages had talked about changes. Well, we have zoning here. We have single family zoning and the business district, BA district, RC and BA. They seem to have worked very well for this village. It's one of the most desirable places to live in Massachusetts, if not the most desirable, and some of the East Coast. Okay, but there are a number of people, including some on the our town employees, that see this as a business opportunity. Many of them are in that kind of business. We have to worry about that as a village association and as a people here. So worst case scenario, we get all this. Next thing they're going to do is change zoning. And if they change zoning, like I've heard in some respects, that they want to have multifamily by right, then our homes will be turned into 2 high-end Airbnbs, and that will keep families, will push families out because they could be monetized at a higher level that families can get a mortgage and pay for their house. That's what we're really talking about here. We'll talk about this for about 15 years. But what's kept this from happening is sewage in the village. Okay, we can build sewage, but we don't have to change zoning because of being built sewage. But that's one of that's the linchpin for a lot of these connected people who have personal financial interest in this town. Many of them sit on boards and on the town council. We've seen that they can't have the vote. They postponed it twice about the form-based zoning because a number of those individuals have properties involved in that and they're conflicted. Fortunately, that's where our town works now. So I think this board should think about that in the next few months about coming up with what we desire for zoning versus having it come down from on high through people who have a personal financial business interest in those changes. And so that's my moving on.
Jonathan, I think the zoning we have right now, the BA zone is for the business area works perfectly. I don't think we should make any changes in it. Comprehensive plan, I would need to change it. The BA, with Osterville's the only one that has BA zoning in it, working very, very well. I think.
I agree. I don't think you should change anything.
like I said, there's a number of people, or actors in this town. One was here for the LTP meeting, the chairman of that group. And he was proposing that or asking her that, talking about the first thing when the LCP came up. It wasn't about all this other stuff we were talking about. It was that.
Well, I corrected him when he said we didn't have any.
Yes.
zoning.
Yes.
Maybe that was the reason it wasn't put in there, because we don't want any changes. It wasn't even necessary to bring it up,
Yes.
because we're happy, I didn't look at the other villages' plans. Possibly the reason that they put it in there about their zoning is because they really wanted changes to their zoning, where we are very comfortable with the way we're zoned today.
I agree. I think Chuck will also agree, and a number of GAIL. We were here in the 2010, we worked on the 2000, actually in 2005, when they started doing that. One of the things we didn't want to change was zoning. So sewage will change a lot here, including when we spent how many years talking about the Darby project, which is the project in Old Mill, where we look Shaw's Pond. Well, they wanted to put low income housing there, 150 units with about 550 people there. Okay, and that was, but sewage comes in, that's back in play. Okay, so there's a lot of, go ahead, Heather, you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I have a question, and it might be a request for analysis, Paul.
Oh, yeah.
With respect to sort of density zoning, and there's clearly been all kinds of proposals leading into density zoning. After I read many of them, I sort of walked around this village with a different eye. It's really dense. Like it's already dense. So, and we're already challenged on purpose. So I would actually love to see some analysis of the village centers housing per square acre, pick your metric, whatever it is. I would say second to Hyannis, we've already checked the contribution to density box. So if people are looking for density, we're done.
Yeah, I don't
So
think
if
there's
there's
any
analysis,
community that
then
has
we can do it,
as many condominiums. We have,
Right.
so, yeah, we're definitely,
I think we've already embraced it and completed the
Yeah.
task of contributing to density. But, and if there's analysis anyone could bring to bear on that, it would be very helpful.
yeah, comparative to
Yeah.
the different
Yeah.
village centers
So that we can
effectively.
sort of be fact-based.
Yeah.
When these issues come up.
All right, yeah, I can look into that.
One of the questions too on the town, if they do the sewer, and we get the town to say that the zoning's not gonna change even when the sewers come in. I don't know, checking me from a legal standpoint, I don't know if that's something that can be done, or that Helen was asked about that, and the county asked her how you would say, yeah, Paul, I don't know if you have a.
No, I'm, yeah, we will defend the character, the look and the feel of the village center. And so all the sort of worst case scenario projections of what this village could look like in the future, I think are completely hyperbole. I think we can totally change.
Yeah. I'll give you transcripts.
Sure.
Many meeting minutes quoting town staff. Right, there's not hyperbole, it's quotes from town staff that memorialize in town minutes saying, we want to move.
I've
that."
seen those, yeah, you forwarded them.
Yeah,
Nobody's
exactly.
really talking about, this keeps
But it's not
being
hyperbole.
sort of, well,
It's
it
not.
keeps being sort of something that you feel like is coming down the road, that if we move off of septic to sewer, then we're just gonna blow out all the zoning that we've had around here, and that this village will lose its character. And I'm not gonna let that happen. It's something that I ran on when I got elected, and so I will continue to make sure that any potential zoning changes that are proposed stay in the area that they're supposed to stay. So the one we're talking about right now is the Hyannis Main Street area. And I know there's been comments, stray ones, that you have seized upon to say that this might be something that's replicated throughout all the villages, and I just there's,
Here's what I'll do,
yeah,
if you get some analysis about density,
okay.
I'll make a package.
I think I've
of
seen it,
minutes.
to be honest with you. Yeah.
That
So-
isn't straight comments. It's not straight comments. It's a consistent recorded message from town employees about their vision over time. So I'll put that all together and provide.
All right, good.
And for years, I've seen that also. It's not hyperbole at all. This is
Yeah.
repeating exactly what the town employees and the town planning department has said
Yeah.
in their own words, in public. We actually have the recordings, you can listen to it also. Okay, so to say that it's hyperbole is minimizing the problems here that we see coming down the road. And these are our
I'm
officials
not
that are in
minimizing
charge
it.
of making these decisions.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so that's not the correct word to describe it. Moving on, I want to have something done for honorariums. At times, we recognize people in a certain way, like a gift certificate or something, for people who've done something for the village association in the past. And I have one that I'd like to bring to the board, is that we've had large meetings, much larger in the last year than we've had in a long time here. That takes up library staff, library time, and that kind of stuff. We meet here without paying a fee for this room, because we're the Osterville Village Association, we've always had that agreement. But it's come to a point where we're using this and it's costing the library some significant funds to cover staff and that kind of thing. I talked to Cindy Schulman, she's thinking about maybe asking us to pay us if we have to have extra employees here at night. And I personally don't think that's far out of range. It's just, if they have to schedule people here, which we're scheduling. But I also want to talk about Cindy, who spent countless hours here setting up these meetings, doing this for the last year now. Okay, and she's here, and you can tell she works a long day. And I was thinking that maybe we ought to give her a gift certificate and thank her for to this point for doing that. And I would propose that we give her, say, $125 or $50 gift certificate to say 5 days or something, to thank her for doing what she's done to this point here to help us out. And in fact, these meetings, at times we say there's gonna be meetings, we say, how many people are coming? I don't know. And then there's 70 people here. Okay, so it's taxing the system. So I think just as a thank you for that, I think we should do that. And I'll be glad to hear any discussion about it and what people think.
She does a lot, absolutely.
You know, what might be a nice gift certificate for her? It's a gift certificate to the Cape Cod Animal Hospital, because she has her 2 dogs, and they cost a lot of money, and they have nice gift certificates over there, Christmas. And I'm not so sure she'd care about going out to dinner, but I think something for her dogs would mean more to her, really.
Is that okay with everybody? Yes. $150.
Yes, okay, good animal hospital, that's where she takes it.
Okay. All right, put a motion forward for.
I move that for the 50 gift certificate for Cape Cod Animal Hospital, Cindy, an appreciation for everything she's done.
Okay, any further comment? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Oh, okay, thank you. One other thing is that, Jen, I understand you're having this meeting.
Right.
Is there any reason why this is the local comprehensive plan that was here a month ago, we were talking about earlier, and they said they would come back to the village association and have another meeting. You're having it at the Historical Society. Is there a reason for that?
December 13th as a follow-up, because I know there are lots of agenda items on the O.B.A. regular meetings, and this is just a chance to sort of step back and focus on the local comprehensive plan. So we welcome all of you to attend December 13th, 7 p.m. Osterville Historical Museum to share your thoughts.
Continuation from that last meeting that they said they were going to schedule here.
In a way, it's a continuation, but it's also just, I see it as another opportunity for people to gather and share their thoughts. So we'd welcome everybody to attend and share your thoughts, or go online and fill out the survey online on the Town of Barnesville website.
Is the town planning to come back? And as they said they would, they'd contact me. We'd have another meeting with the LCP, because we really didn't get into it.
Yes, I think they'd be more than happy to come back in person. This is just one of the other outreach possibilities that we're doing. And we've done a number of things. Coffee with an LCP member across the villages. I was here at the library a few weeks ago on a Friday and got to talk with a few folks about Osterville. And so it's just another one of those outreach opportunities.
One thing you could bring back to that committee is that they did this SWAT thing. I don't know what that stands for, but it sort of asks you first, what do you like about your village, what you don't like, then it goes somewhere else. It's like, it's very 5th grade-ish. there's specific issues that we're talking about here, whether it's zoning or whether it's, that we never get to with that kind of a format.
Right.
We'd actually like to have substantive conversations. Because what happens is we've seen before, and those of us who've been here a long time and watched the town work, they come up with vague basics, they don't want this, and then they just come up with it in the back room with what's actually going to happen to our village. We don't want to see that happen, so we'd like to actually have him come to us without some kind of a SWOT, whatever you call it, and actually talk about the actual facts that we want to make sure, particularly zoning, what's going to happen after. This is the long-range comprehensive plan has to do with everything to do with villages, whether playgrounds of the town, whether they're going to build a park somewhere, whether they're going to change zoning, everything. Okay, and this is the vehicle they're going to go ahead with to possibly do those kind of things. So we need to discuss those actual issues and not spend a half an hour listening to some person talk about, you know, you like your beaches, you like your this, you like your that. We actually want to talk about what the substantive issues that we're talking about. And since you're on the committee, I wish you'd bring that back to let them know.
I think that a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges is kind of a typical threats. Threats is kind of a typical way to start some of these things to get people generating those other deeper issues. But I totally agree.
We have a certain, I'm sorry to interrupt, we have a certain period of time here. We didn't get to it last time. Partly my fault, because we asked some questions about certain questions about who was running it and who's what their interests are.
Right.
Waiting to the end to get to the threats part, we don't get that much time.
Well,
we got to redo the format so it actually talks about issues that we're really concerned with as a board here, as a Osterville Village Association.
So the format on December 13th will be different. And again, it's just another opportunity for people to get into those issues and express their thoughts. So I think it's a perfect chance because it's not impeding on the time of other agenda items, which clearly are very important as well to the village.
Yeah, well, the last LCP meeting was about the LCP. It was a special meeting. Okay, it was specifically for that. So we can do that with a larger audience with this room that we can do with the Historical Society at times. So a lot of us won't be here next week. We'd like to have more, a little bit farther notice if we could. And but anyway, if you could relay that back to the chairman.
Absolutely.
And I'd appreciate it. Next meeting, the O.B.A. is January 3rd, 2022. All are welcome. Any public, 2023, any public comment that we haven't heard before that people would like to say before they leave? Hearing none, motion to adjourn.